And a good day to you, Explore Nation. John Lynskey, your ambassador for Alumni Affairs, here with Season 6, Episode 14, which is a Part 2 with the brothers Gonzalez, Tony, and Joaquin, following up from we don't do Part 2s very often, so very excited about this, and as always, grateful to the Albert Barthélemy family for their sponsorship. And so, here we are. Where we last left off, you had decided to tell Joe Gibbs that you weren't interested. Thank you very much. I'd like to have a beer with you one day. And he offered, $1 million, whatever that figure was exactly, to an offensive tackle, which was unheard of back in the day. And as you, Tony, pointed out, or actually you did, Joaquin, Tony made you a better offer.
Yeah.
I
doubt it.
And any regrets looking back, or was it just full speed? Once you made up your mind, was it full speed ahead?
Yeah, it was full speed ahead. I think it's everything in life is timing. You hear that time and time again. It was a crossroads in my life. My wife was pregnant with Vinny.
Yeah.
I had never been hurt in my career ever. I had just come off of an injury. So there was a lot of questions and a lot of change going on in my head. And I was like, once I knew I had gone to school, I got in my master's. I knew that I was going to eventually end up, here. It took a little bit of time, a couple of weeks before I started getting back and getting into the business. But once that happened, I was ready to say no and plow ahead.
Okay. Were you ready for him to come back on board or come on board, Tony?
Absolutely. It happened right at the right time. Our chief operating officer at the time wasn't doing his job to the best of his abilities, actually. He had some personal issues going on, and then Joaquin shows back up in Miami after, he had gotten cut by Indianapolis, waiting on that next call, which happened to be Washington. But like he said before, he started coming around the office, and we started talking about the things that we needed to get done. And if I remember correctly, we were upgrading our computer systems.
Yeah, we're looking into doing that.
We were looking into making a huge investment in the platform that we still have, I think, to this day, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And obviously, that's one of the things that he studied and he was versed in. So it was God sent. It was like the stars aligned, and then it allowed me, instead of being as involved as I was in every aspect of the business, to allow him to kind of look at that operation side. And obviously, me and my brother, like we said before, have always been able to finish each other's sentences and kind of think on the same wavelength. And what it allowed me to do was then focus more on the purchasing and the sales side of things, where I could really, start to grow the business at a faster clip than having to have your hands in every little piece of it, right?
One of the coolest things was, Tony always ran the business bigger than when it was. What I mean by that, there was always process, right? There was always checks and balances. But one of the coolest things coming into the business and having, the history of actually mounting tires and doing every aspect every summer with my dad and being in the business, the cool thing was to actually kind of have a canvas where there was processes in place, but the actual business process from order entry to order dispatch, from, purchase order entry, the tracking and all of that, that was really cool to kind of be able to build that from an ERP system where we were currently on a platform that we were upgrading and moving towards kind of like, hey, we're really going to really invest into this new technology. And that was one of the things that, like Tony mentioned, it allowed him to go do that, but it also allowed us to really grow as we added transactions to the business, right? Because one thing is to go out and get the sales, but if you can't process them and you don't have the right foundation to be able to do it, it's fruitless, right? Because you can only make a sale once. You got to be able to service the customer and be able to track and be able to deliver, right? And I think that's what, like Tony mentioned, the stars aligned, came in. I studied management information systems that gave me the insight to understand process. They were already looking at, but Tony, as the CEO, never felt comfortable handing those keys off to somebody and be like,
Plus, I had no clue. I mean, I'm old school, man. I'm writing things down.
Yeah.
I'm still using an old Rolodex and shit. I was lost in the wilderness there. Obviously, if I applied myself and really got into it, I would logically be able to figure things out, but it was not my my field. It was not my forte for sure. And that's where he was so valuable at that point in time. Because again, it just freed me up to be able to focus on the bigger picture of growing the business by selling more and purchasing better.
You guys are very close. It's obvious. You can finish each other's sentences. It's truly a family business. You know, your sister's involved. You know, what is that dynamic? Brother to brother is one thing. How is it brother to sister with the whole
Well,
thing?
my sister actually worked with us at the time.
Okay.
She's 5 years younger than I am, 6 years older than Joaquin. She's basically in the middle. And she worked with us for at least 5 or 6 years in those early years.
Yeah.
I don't know if she was there when
She
you
was
got
never.
there.
I was there in the summers and she was working there, but never when I came back full time. She was
Okay.
already moved on.
But no, yeah. The reason me and my sister still don't work together today is that she is very much like me in terms of her way or the highway kind of thing. And not to say that I'm a tyrant, I'm not. At least I don't consider myself. Some people would say, you know, it's my way or the highway. I do like opinions, and I've always said I like to be like the dumbest guy in the room. If I could surround myself by intelligent people, then I've done my job as a leader, right? So I do listen, but a lot of times I go with my gut. You know, if my gut says, hey, this is the way to go, you could have a good argument, but it's my gut. And my gut.
I just think
rarely
that for
fails
my
me.
sister, you know, the sandbox that she was playing in at Tire Group at the time was way too small for her. I mean,
Yeah.
she
Gotcha.
could definitely do
Yeah.
much more, and she's proven that, right? She's, you know, up there, one of the muckety mucks with Baptist, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
she's done a phenomenal job in growing in that
We
organization.
weren't spending much money on marketing at the time, and that's her field. And she was doing a lot of menial things. So yeah, she would have been severely hampered. Only in recent years, with the advent of Cosmo and the growth of that, have we really stepped up our game on the marketing side. But that's still a fraction of the kinds of budgets she runs today for Baptist Health System. So it all worked out. Now she is an investor in the business.
Yes.
But she's very hands off,
And her husband works with us for over 20 years, which is another brother. And
Adolfo is a brother to us. I grew up with Adolfo back from elementary school, basically, and I hadn't seen him in years. When Georgina shows up at my doorstep at the house, practically I hadn't seen Adolfo in 6-7 years, and he's again my age.
Okay.
So he's 5 or 6 years older than Georgina, and they just happen to meet. And he shows up at the doorstep, and I'm like, "What the fuck is this guy doing here?" Bleep. Yep. And here we are. Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
But that was exactly what I thought. Anyways,
don't fault him for being honest, coach.
No, it's not. We expect that.
but here we are, you know, I guess 30 years later, and he's an integral part of the company. He's great at what he does. He's got great customer relationships, and, you know, we've been lucky to have him.
You know, you raised a very good point. We had a leadership seminar here the other day. The whole smartest guy in the room thing. At the end of the day, it is your call. But it seems to me that great leaders, truly great leaders, you might be the smartest guy in the room. That's fine. Find people equally as smart and surround yourself. And I've noticed there's not a lot of turnover at your company. You know, and clearly you have, it's like a coaching staff. When you have that chemistry, you want to keep it. Would you agree with that whole leadership style? That, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to make the call, but do you go around the table?
100%. You know, ever since we reacquired the business 2.5 years ago, and we haven't got into that yet, but to answer your question, you know, I thought myself to be more mature now, obviously, than I was 15, 20 years ago, and
Sure.
the ability to let go of certain things. But I still find myself, you know, reverting to old habits in a sense that I do like to get into the details of things, because that's where success lies for me. If you don't do the details right, you ain't gonna get the big things right. Or if you do get the big things right, those details, they're like loose bricks on a foundation. And at any time, one could crack, and then you've got a bigger issue going on. So if we do the little things right, we'll get the big things right. But going back to your point about, you know, listening and just staying quiet, I think that holds true in life, period. If you're in an argument and you just sit back and let the other person vent, and you're able to control yourself and have the patience to withstand that, you're gonna come out on top, because, you know, you can't think while you're talking. And if you're able to sit back and just, and what I like to do is I really, especially at this stage of the game, and I was talking about this a second ago with maturity and stuff like that, I don't want to have to get involved in the nitty-gritty of things because, again, I want to be able to see the entire landscape. And if I get too far in the weeds on something, then I'm not looking at everything. So I do like to have other people practically make decisions. And if I think they're logical, even though they might not be 100% what I thought, then I'm cool with it. Let's go and test that because, again, I don't have the answer to everything. And I've learned that obviously the hard way throughout the years. Okay. So yeah, I'm totally cool with that. And I do want people around me that will call me out and that, tell me, hey, look, there's a better way, or I don't agree with this, or you're being a dick. You got to be called out sometimes, and he does that. No, he does that from time to time.
I think that, for me, leadership, and again, I've had different points of view, and we've all played sports here, but, and it's not even about sports, whether you have played or not, but there's different types of leadership. And, if you're going to be a very good leader, you have to be a different leader to different people. And what I mean by that is, one thing is leading by, okay, this is the decision, this is the path that we're going on. And you can read plenty of books, like From Good to Great. It's not about, where we're going. It's the people that are on the bus, because you want people that are committed. And if we're going this way, they're committed. If we're going that way, they're committed. It doesn't matter where the bus is going. They're just committed to the bus and to the cause. And I think that we at Tire Group and Cosmo, we've done a fantastic job by our tenure. And you've been around and done some chats with some of our team. And, obviously the people that are there are fully committed and have been there for a very long time. But in terms of leadership, one thing is being a leader and leading by example, but another one is being a different leader to different people to get the most out of you. And what I mean by that, you could use a baseball or football analogy. Football would probably be the easiest. Like, okay, what top quarterbacks are in the league? You have Buffalo, Baltimore. All right, great. Let's pick a team that doesn't have a good quarterback, right? Let's say Cleveland, right? Yeah. So Cleveland's quarterback. How can that coaching staff, right, get the most out of their quarterback? Yeah. If you're expecting them to throw, 40 times a game, he's already you're not going to get. Yeah. So you either change him, or let's develop a game plan to take advantage of his strengths. Now, I say that tongue in cheek, right? You have a business to run. You have to be profitable. It's all great. And, at the end of the day, and I think that we do a good job of, we're family and we all take care of each other, but let's not lose the fact that we are a for-profit business, that we need to be in the green, right? That we need to produce and we need to get good results, because obviously we're here for a reason. But back to what I was saying is the ability to get the most out of your teams to achieve that success. I think that's where true leadership resides, right? Where when you walk into a room, you have the ability of chastising, but at the same time getting the most and pulling the best out of, because you got to be a little bit of everything. And I always refer this in conversation with, and it could be taken out of context, but I'll say it here in the sense that, and it's not to be a hypocrite, but it's wearing a lot of hats, or being like, the bullfighter, right? The bullfighter, dances around. He dresses like a girl. He's up on his tippy toes, but at the end of the day, he ends up killing the bull. Yeah, exactly. So he does whatever he has to do.
Most of the time,
yeah. Well, we saw some pictures in Madrid that said otherwise, but the guys did survive. But yeah, so I've always taken that when, my dad and Tony had mentioned that before when I was young, I was like, it doesn't mean that I'm a hypocrite. It just means that at the end of the day, sometimes the path to success isn't straight.
Yeah, you got to use psychology. You got to understand what makes people tick and how to approach them, right? And there's people even within the team that get upset with each other, and I find myself reminding them, even though I've been upset with that person or what have you, but I'll say, listen, that person has some very good qualities that are irreplaceable, and that's X, Y, and Z. Yeah, they're deficient over here, but we'll figure that out. Just somebody else will do that. But the qualities that he does have, or that she has, outweigh the negative. And no one's perfect, right? We all have families, we all have personal issues, we all have scars, we all have so many things going on between the years that, as long as you find people that are loyal, that respect, that that show up. That's an important thing nowadays, right? And that you know,
care.
that care, that get along. You want harmony, right? You don't want screaming or
The
anything
greatest
like that.
thing about humanity is everybody wants to be part of something bigger than themselves. Whoever tells you they don't is full of crap. Everybody wants to be associated with a winner. Everybody wants to have a goal that's bigger than just their individual
Everybody
selves.
wants something they can buy into. I agree.
100%.
And you feel better about yourself when you know that you're serving a greater good.
Yeah, you're part of a community. I mean, we see it here with the brotherhood. I mean,
Yeah.
and people invest time into that, and you want that.
Agreed. How do you handle adversity? How do you handle a setback?
Well, I've had so many in my career, and you know, not necessarily in personal life, but just in business itself, that I always know that there's another chance, there's another tomorrow, and as long as you don't, a lot of people fail because they just stop without ever knowing how close they are to that goal or to that finish line, right? They could be on the 1 yard line, and that's the moment after trying for 10 years, that's the moment they give up. And they were on the 1 yard line. One thing changes your fortune, basically. And I had that happen in my business as well. I mean, we were up against the ropes for the first 10 years, 11, 12 years. We were technically bankrupt on paper. We were over leveraged. Our debt to equity ratio was through the roof. The bank that was loaning us money was raping us because no other bank would loan us money at the time. And again, the way the universe works is that bank ends up going out of business. The FDIC takes it over. And we were able to negotiate a discount on our loan because we told the FDIC, listen, if we got to pay back this money, look at our balance sheet. We can't do it. And you're going to put this company out of business that has 65, 70 souls that depend on it and are making a living off of it. And we were able to negotiate a discount with the FDIC. And that was the difference in now being able to go to another bank and saying, look at our new balance sheet with less debt. And now our debt to equity ratio made sense for them. And we were able to get into a banking relationship that we still have to this day. We've now, you know, in the last 25 years since that or so, we've been with other banks here and there, especially when Penske owned us, that they wanted us to bank with their bankers or whatever, but we're back with that bank. And we never looked back from that. That was a turning point for our company, literally about 10 years into our 33-year, 34-year history now. So again, it's amazing how it works, how the universe works, right? If you just keep at it, because let me tell you, there were times I was borrowing money to pay my taxes. We were making money. It's not a matter, you know, businesses fail for various reasons. One of them is you're undercapitalized and you're having too much success, right? So you've got too much receivables, you got too much inventory, and the money's not coming in quick enough, and you're not able to just service, you know, the debt and or your payables. I remember sending Goodyear's check to Kumho and Kumho's check to, you know, XYZ Tire up in Ohio, you know, wherever. And oh my God, I sent the wrong checks. Can you send it? And that would buy me a week, and that was the difference, you know, and being able to cover it or not, because I was waiting for money coming in from whoever we were selling to. So
I think that was a class he took here, actually, his senior year.
Shuffle the checks.
Yeah,
Shuffle the checks.
how to increase your working capital.
Yeah,
101.
those were some dark days. Those were some dark days from the perspective of, you know, you're young. I was 22 when I started the business. This is happening in this is happening still while I'm in my, you know, mid to late 20s. I don't have the perspective that I have now, and talk about anxiety and talk about, well, I was sleeping 3-4 hours a day at best. I was sleeping in the office a lot of days. I would not go home because I was dealing in Europe and in Asia and here in the US and in South America and Central America. And, you know, I had to make it happen, and getting on planes, going to collect, and, you know, going to visit suppliers in China. The first trip I took to China was in 1995, I believe. Spent a month there. They still had bicycles back then. Now everybody's in a Mercedes over there. But
Wow.
back it was like the old James Bond movies where you would drive and the bikes would part like that. I experienced that. So yeah, it's all about time, right, and patience, and just sticking with it, right?
Perseverance.
Yeah.
How about you? Adversity.
You know, adversity to me is, Tony, and you've heard a lot and you've read a lot, and Tony really touched on those points. To me, adversity is kind of a measure of it puts things in perspective of how much did I really try. And let me break that down and put it in context. Is everybody wants to succeed, and everything that you do, you want to have success at the end. Whether you're taking a test, you want to get 100 in life, you want to succeed. But when you face adversity or you fail, which is kind of the same thing, it really puts in perspective, what is it that was lacking for you to make that success? Was it the product? Was it my pitch? Was it my effort? And it's harder when you're part of a team and you face adversity, because there's a lot of moving parts to that adversity. When you're a single person, if you're playing singles tennis and you lose,
Okay. Yeah. On me.
it's on me, right? But as Tony mentioned, and it's a management style that it's almost like psychosis or anxiety or however you want to call it, which is sometimes we do want to get into the weeds, because when you have as much experience as Tony has, because he's been here longer and he's run the business longer, you learn from that, right? And you never make the same mistake twice. You hope, right? You're smart enough not to, but learning from that experience is hard to transfer experience. And I see that day to day with like my son, and I'm like, trust me, just play it this way. So, and still, because experience has to be experienced.
Can't buy it.
Yeah, you can't
rent it.
And it doesn't matter how much. So to me, adversity, it puts in question the effort down the line. Effort or just the approach, right? And to me, I'm super anal retentive. I'm an A-type personality. And that's why Tony and I really get along. I do really focus on the details a lot of the business process and the transaction. When something doesn't go our way or it fails, it really puts in question the whole entire process. And there's no quit in the game. I think that I'm 40, turning 46 this year. One of the things that I think I mentioned this in the part one of this interview, was when I was in college and playing football at the University of Miami, the goal was to win a national championship. Mm-hmm. Eat, sleep. Every day was all about football and how we could get better every single day. One of the saddest things I ever experienced was the day that I win the national championship, and I'm sitting there in the locker room, at the Rose Bowl Stadium, and I'm like, what now?
Now what? Yeah.
So I think that if you've experienced that, you realize that the joy is not in the outcome, right?
It's the journey.
The journey, right? And you've heard that success is a journey, not a destination. Well, adversity is a journey. It's not a destination either. It's both.
It's not a final destination.
It's not a final destination. It's part of the process to get to that success. And success could be measured because, you hear it all the time. People retire and then they're like, they unretire because, hey, I've seen retirement. It sucks. Yeah. I'm not useful. I need to be doing something. So I think as humans, you want to, and adversity just gives you an opportunity to go back and, recalibrate your efforts and do it better.
It's very good. It's very good. There's a whole nother side to you, that it's fascinating for me. I think for people, a lot of people, you're either a math brain, science brain, or you're a liberal arts word type, creative, artistic brain. You have both. And you're a tremendous artist. And I know you don't share your works and everything else, but talk about the importance of art and creativity in whatever form it may be to you, and how it helps you as a businessman.
Well, by the way, thank you very much for the compliment. It's something that I've always done really for myself, and I've reflected on this a lot. And I go back to when I was a child, and I would take toys apart, and I never knew the whys of it until, again, you get older and you start looking back and you say, well, why did I do this? Why did I do that? But I used to take toys apart and build new toys from perfectly good toys, and stuff like that. And I just build a monorail on a piece of wood with a V thing of aluminum, and I'd carve out of balsa wood this thing, and it would run on a rail, and I had this creativity within me, all the while being a very good student and being good at every subject matter and stuff like that. It just came kind of natural to me. I was never a bookworm or would go home and study a whole lot. I paid attention in class, which, because I had you as a instructor, as a teacher. So with that said, I think it's something that's always resided in me and just has different ways of coming out. And, creating a business, I created a business. I created without... And I never graduated college, by the way. I did 2 years. I did a year at UM and a year at FIU. And I was thrust into the fire, basically, because of life circumstances. But luckily, like we spoke about in the first episode, our father made us work. Our father made us understand. And I think the most crucial thing that a person could have in business is logic. Okay. And if you have logic and you're able to deduce, different situations and say, well, this is logical, this isn't, whatever it may be, and you add a little bit of creativity. I always wanted to stand out from the competition. That was something that we strove for from beginning, and I think Joaquin mentioned it earlier. He says we've always projected to be a lot bigger than we are. And from day one, we grew pretty fast, but regardless, from day one, I created sales manuals. I created, team member manuals. I had manuals for every little thing, and I would always say to the people were like, "You're crazy. There's 10 of us here. We could talk to each other. There's no need." But I would say to myself, "Yeah, but one day there'll be 50 of us. One day there'll be 100 of us. One day," and I want it to be that if I keel over, God forbid, the person that comes and sits at my desk behind me will know exactly how to run this business because we've left it all documented. We've got all the forms, we've got all the processes, we've got all the steps for every little thing, from payment collection to, processing a sales order to purchasing to whatever it may be. So that's creativity in and of itself without ever having actually studied the flow, per se. It's, again, just logic combined with creativity. And then, as we've grown as a company, it's allowed me to actually invest more in the marketing side of things and really do things that our competition in our business, we're in a very low margin, high volume business. So a lot of competitors aren't spending money to look different or be different. They're just in the numbers game.
Okay.
But I've always said, or I've always thought in our mindset as a company is, if we invest a little bit on the marketing side, if we invest a little bit in ourselves and just be a little bit better than our competition, then our customers are going to be more loyal to us and maybe even pay us a little bit more. Not a lot more, because in our business, you'll lose a customer over 25 cents a unit. But it's worked out. It's worked out because our customers have been brought into a family that they see the quality of the people. They see the quality of what we do. We're not, you should see how many places we walk into around the country that are major wholesalers, and they're working under dust that's been there for 30 years. Wow. And you're like, and they're very profitable, but they're run really old school. And like I said, it's just about turning and turning and turning. And we've done things a little bit different. And that's where my creativity, I think, was shown in the business, where we've always stood out from the competition. And it's allowed us to attract better suppliers. It's allowed us to attract also better customers. And we share a lot of our ways of doing business and a lot of the marketing aspects of what we do with our customers as well, to make them better. I've always believed that if my customer's growing, I'm growing, right? It's especially with the type of customers we have. We've always attacked the medium to small customer. I learned from a very young age, if you go after the big guys, you're just another piece of their portfolio, but they're not necessarily loyal to you. Now, if you take a small guy or medium guy and you gamble, because a lot of these guys you got to give credit to, and back when we were really growing, most of our business was overseas. So you got to make sure you pick the right guys. But if you help one of those medium or mid-sized guys grow and you become 60, 70, 80% of their supply, now you got true loyalty, because you're so important to them, just like they are to you, and you finance their growth, basically. It's part of the equation here. We act as a bank to a lot of our customers, and we help them grow, all the while they're helping us grow, right? And there's been turbulence along the way, right? You got some guys that end up going bad, and you pick the wrong guy in a certain market, and that's part of the deal, right? And you got to be able to take those hits and weather the storm. But then I think where my creativity really ended up flourishing was when we sold the majority of our business to Lynskey back in 2011. It allowed me, I had been feeling for a while that I always wanted to get in. I think I don't know if I said this in the first episode or not. They say, or there's a Asian philosophy that says you die 3 times.
Yes.
I think I went through that: the day your heart stops, the day you're buried, and the last time someone on earth mentions your name. So I said to myself, and this is very egotistical, I admit it, but I always wanted to be able to leave my mark. I always thought to myself, well, my business, 20, 30, 50 years after I'm gone, it might or might not be here. It might not even be here by the time I'm gone. What did I leave behind? Yeah, I provided, and many people ate off of this plate, and families were, grew up because of it, and Tiger Group provided a good living for a lot of people. But once it's gone, it's gone. There's it's not going to be very remembered. I always thought to myself, if I could get into the entertainment side of things and leave my mark in music and/or film, etc., your name kind of lives on, because that never goes away. There's films from 100 years ago that are still being seen,
Correct.
right? And that's kind of what drove me to get into those fields. And then it just, there's something that I discovered during that process, which was the fact that when I get around people on the music side, or I got around people on the art side, because we did a film about graffiti called Vandal, I became like a chameleon. I could say, and just out of admiration, right, say, wow, I wish I could do that. And then, fuck, I think I could do that. And then I try and do it, and I've written songs, and I even vote on the Latin Grammys and on the American Grammys because of that. I've had like 20 songs recorded, and I can't keep a beat. And then the other side of it is I'm colorblind. Yet I start painting,
which is insane.
Yeah, it's like, even in my own mind, I'm like, but I'm not afraid to fail.
Okay.
I'm not embarrassed by anything I do. I think no one should be. I mean, we're all human. Some have better skills at one thing or another, but as long as you're trying, I think that's all you could do. And there's a lot of my art at the beginning that I was kind of hesitant to show to anyone, but I got over it, and it's just like I think when I hear people tell me, "Hey, wow, I really like what you've done," it's I'm seeing these things in it. It makes me feel a certain way. That's pretty cool, and that's pretty rewarding. And the same thing with music, lyrics that you've written, where people have said, "Wow, that's pretty deep. That's cool." And then it's kind of like something that just fills your soul, kind of thing. I could only imagine, and is like when an artist stands in front of an audience in a stadium, 50,000 people, and they're singing, and they have that ability, and they're getting that clap and that energy sent towards them from the crowd. Look, I get chills when I think about that. What that must feel like. I mean, that is very, very special. And I know a lot of them don't take it for granted, because I've heard them talk about that, and that's pretty cool. So anything that pops into my mind, so long as I have the time. Like right now, I haven't been painting. I haven't been painting in literally the last year or so. I'm so deep into the business. That's the thing about me too, is like now all my creativity is in the business, and it's.
So the business is the canvas, right?
Right now, the business is the canvas, especially on the marketing side of it.
Okay.
And that's where I'm dedicating my process to. But eventually one day, I imagine, I'll be able to get into other stuff again.
Tony said something that made me think of you when you're in front of 50,000, 80,000 people, and the cheers and the adulation and everything else. You experienced that. How hard is it when the cheering stops?
It's tough. It's tough because you're used to getting that, right, and receiving that. And for sure, I think that for me, I mean, if I understand your question correctly, for me, the first year after stopping to play football I would have dreams where I was late to a meeting, or I still think that I was I have to get here. I'm like, and it was tough. What made it easy was I had somewhere to go. I had a new team, right? Which was Team TGI. I realized that stepping down from as far as I reached at the professional level, the further along you get, the harder it is to come off of that, right? Because the step down from that type of environment is bigger. And that's why, for example, when Brett Romberg stopped playing football because he played a couple more years than I did in the NFL, gave him an opportunity to come into sales, and he started selling for us. Same thing with Sherko. Sherko went off, and he was a starting guard for our national championship team. He was a year younger than I, but he played in the CFL for like 8 or 9 years. When he was done, he spoke Farsi, and I'm like, oh, perfect. We're just dabbling into the Middle East. Yeah. This guy, and Persians are really good businessmen. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. And the guy came in and really knocked it out of the park. So at that point, we would always say that we had the best offensive line in the tire business. But providing that platform, I've seen it when the clapping stops. I've seen what it does to guys. And we've all seen, the shows where it's like, oh, this guy made $80 million in his career, and now he's broke. Well, the transition is tough because when you're in that limelight and when you're singing or you're playing and you're at the top of your game, everybody wants a piece of you and everybody wants to be associated with you. But when you're not, you're just a regular old guy, and you got to have, I don't think you're mature enough at that age, as Tony mentioned. Imagine he started this business when he was 19, 20 years old. To be able to do that and have all of this pressure on him, well, it's the same thing. It's a different type of pressure. When you've played football your whole entire life, you've been guided by iron, right? Mm-hmm. By the iron fist. It's like, be here at 6. If you don't, you run. Well, that's one way to do things. But hey, when you can't pay your mortgage, you can't just go run 110s. See, you got to come up with the money. You got to figure it out. And as you get kids, and then now there's more people leaning on you, and that transition for me was easy because I had a place to go. I had a new team. I had where to put all of this passion into without actually having to go search for it.
That's very important because at the level you were at and in the music business, whatever the case may be, too many people confuse what they do for who they are. And when they can't do that anymore, all of a sudden,
correct.
Who am I?
No,
where do I go? What do I do? And that's how, money gets burned through and everything else. And so it's interesting to see how you made that adjustment. And it's also interesting, and it obviously fascinates me as a business. You're such a businessman, but then you're incredibly creative. Well, the business can be your canvas too, which is great.
And to add to that, I actually went through kind of the same thing because when Penske acquired us, after 3 years, from 2011 to 2014, I had a contract to be there, but then I didn't have a contract to be there anymore after that. And I went to the board and I said, hey, listen, I'm resigning. Oh no, you can't resign. We want you to stay stay on as figure. That's when Joaquin was moved up. I think you were chief operating officer at the time to president of the company. And that was kind of the deal that we made, that Joaquin would become the president. I'd stay on as chairman and CEO, but I wouldn't be there as much as I used to be. I was there, 60, 70 hours a week. I, would cut down to about half, to 30 to 35 hours a week. So that went on for about a year. Then after about a year of that, then I was doing less and less and less. And really by the time it was all said and done, and I got heavily into the music and film and stuff like that, I was not spending more than about 20 or 25 hours a week. I'd be in contact with Joaquin and I'd get involved in certain high-level things, but I was really focused on these other things. And to the point of what you guys were just saying, even though I was doing something that was new and exciting, it wasn't the same as doing what I did all my life and what my family had done since the 1940s, and basically what I was put on earth in a way to do. Gotcha. And I think some people, that's what, your identity is part of that. And that's one of the reasons we bought the company back 2.5 years ago. Okay.
Si naciste para martillo, del cielo te caen los clavos. You were born to be a hammer, nails will rain on you.
Yeah.
Nice.
That means
that's
cute. If you were born to sell tires, you can go do movies and do music and paint.
Yeah.
But you're going to end up selling tires.
Yeah, I was the biggest. I was definitely the biggest proponent of reacquiring the company. We thought about doing other things, and I was kind of burned out with the whole music and film. Again, I'm going as already a mature adult into an industry that I didn't grow up in.
Yeah.
I was the new kid on the block, different world, different speed, not my necessarily the best values in the world at all levels of that those industries. So it wasn't real homey to me. I mean, you know, I had limited success on certain things. I had some good success on the film side of it. Music was really tough, but it was fun and it was a learning experience, and it actually set me up for what I'm doing today. That's, again, life is amazing how it provides, right? And if you look back with a positive mindset and instead of a negative mindset of saying, wow, I wasted or spent, if you don't learn, then you waste it, right? But I learned a lot about filming, about marketing, about creating, you know, campaigns and doing all these different things at different levels. Because I did some small things, I did some big things. I ended up directing commercials for McDonald's and actually won some Telly Awards. I have like 4 Telly Awards as a director. I've produced, I've written, I've done all these different things. So today in marketing, I'm able to really talk intelligently about all these different things that we're doing.
Put more tools in your tool chest.
Absolutely, and it's really amazing how that all worked out, because I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today for our brand Cosmo if I didn't have those experiences / you know, semi-failures, if you want to call it that, learning experiences, right?
You went to school.
I went to school. It cost me a lot of money, but I went to school. I should have gone back to UM. It would have been cheaper. But yeah, that's how I look at it, because that's the only thing. You can't do anything about it. I went through it. I did it. It's gone. No mas. But if you look at what you gain from it, then you're in a much better positive
He just hit on something which I talk about all the time with the kids, and I say this a lot to a lot of different people, specifically in businesses, like, time is going to pass. You know, a week from now, a week will have passed. Mm-hmm. There's no better time than now to start, because the time is going to pass anyways. You know, it's not like if you could just put everything on hold and we're going to stay this young forever and all of us. So whatever you're into or whatever you're thinking about doing, it's like,
get to it.
Because if you're just if you got to move sand from one side of the room to the other, whether you move a bag a day or whether you move a cup a day or half a teaspoon a day, you're moving it. You're moving it, because time will pass and eventually you will get the sand to the other side of the room.
Time waits for no one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. That's for sure. So, totally random question. If you could sit down with any figure, business, music, sports, whatever, living or dead, and just pick their brain, just have a conversation, who would you choose?
Why me first? How about him?
Give him a minute to think about it.
Who would I say? Anybody. I think that
living, dead, whatever field.
Man, there's a lot of different. Like, I'll tell you, one of the guys I would love to have a beer with is Vince Vaughn. I think he's hilarious. Just to find out, I don't even. Hopefully, he's like his characters in most of his
Wouldn't
movies.
that
Like,
be great?
Yeah, like sarcastic or whatever. So, you know, they've asked me that before. I think on the comedy side, I would definitely love to have a beer and just, you know, shoot the
Talk
crap
about
with
the
him.
making of old school.
Yeah, and just, you know, but like a historical figure and kind of, I don't know if I would maybe necessarily have somebody like that I would pick. I would love to live in a particular time period, you know?
Which time period?
Which, like, I've always been interested in, like, the 20s, like the bootlegging and like the 20s. That's always kind of like interested me, but be there with money.
Okay.
Not be there without money.
Yeah.
But I find that time,
not post-depression.
Yeah, like that whole Great Gatsby
Great
vibe.
Gatsby, yes.
Yeah. So, but man, I would really have to think.
I'll throw one out. Van Gogh. I would absolutely. I know
Well, you're colorblind.
Well,
And
but
so
the motion.
He's got both ears.
I could see. I'm colorblind in the sense that I get colors confused. I see color.
Okay.
I just don't know what it is sometimes. Like an orange and a green. You know those dot tests? Have you ever seen those dot
An
tests?
orange is a fruit.
There's that.
Anyway, So yeah, I think a person like Van Gogh, obviously not in his madness, in his deepest of madness times, but just to see his process and really the courage that he had to paint the way he was painting, because it was so avant-garde and so
And he never tasted success.
correct.
At
He never
all.
did. He never did. And the guy, the guy was very unique, and very impressive. His use of the.
How about you, Coach? Who would you
strokes.
who would you want to sit down with? Don't say Yamamoto.
We took care of that, didn't we? I think from the political world, I mean, there's a lot of characters. Abraham Lincoln, how do you deal? How did he deal with such a tumultuous time? And he sacrificed his own life
Yeah.
ultimately for this country. And he made some very unpopular decisions. And he was acting on we talked about a greater good earlier. He was acting for a greater good, although it was somewhat against his own personal principles. And I find him very fascinating.
Sure.
And musically, I would love to have had a conversation with Dwayne Allman, because that man, who I never met, influenced my life completely. And he was another one. His greatest success came, unfortunately, after he died.
How much of the music for the band did he write?
He didn't write. His brother wrote.
His
the
brother
songs.
was-
Greg
okay.
wrote the songs. He played some guitar now, you know. But again, it reminded me of what we were talking about earlier. He strove and he strove and he strove, and he never made any money, but he never gave up on the dream. And just as they're getting huge, he dies in a motorcycle accident, and at 24. And so obviously that is somebody, just from a personal point of view, I'd love to have a conversation with, and also say thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So last question, fellas. We represent 3 decades of Columbus here. What did and what does Columbus High School mean to you both?
Well, for me, it's and Joaquin said the word earlier. It's a brotherhood. It's family. It's a special place. I think when you look around the community and you look around the alumni, you look at now the new generations coming through the school from some of my brother's age and my age, etc. It's just a beautiful thing to see that continuity, right? And to see what it's become as, physically, it's really grown up and become a state of the art. And then from an athletic standpoint as well, it's just so many pieces that have come together. And you know what? I've thought about this. I've thought about the attention to detail from the staff and from the leadership of the school. It's pretty cool. I mean, there's a lot of love there, because this doesn't happen by accident. There's a lot of people.
It doesn't.
There's a lot of people that have had to think this out and know exactly what the future generations are going to need to be successful, and they've provided it. And then, the parents that sacrificed to send them here, it's not inexpensive. And I know, some parents are wealthier than others or whatever, but there's a lot of working class people that have sacrificed a lot to put their kids through this school and to give them that privilege. That I think once you come out of this school, you are definitely blessed in a very special way to go into the future in this community.
Columbus is not a physical place. It is technically, but
I know what you
these
mean.
these walls
It's a state
don't
of-
make
It's a state of mind.
It's right, and for me, Columbus is kind of home, right? It's a place where there's a lot of love, as Tony mentioned, and I'll interject here and say that creating something from scratch sometimes is easier than having something that's been around for a while and maintaining it or making it better. And at Columbus, that Columbus is alive, and it's not the building, it's its people. Because they truly, it's the John Lynskeys of the world, the McKeons, the people that have been here, the Foyles, the Miraballs. I mean, and you look back, when you think of Columbus, you see the sea, and it's almost like if you could really see above your head, you see the Foyles, the Lynskeys, the Miraballs, your best friends, the times that you had, and it brings a smile to your face, through good time and bad time, because it was a very forming time in our lives when we're in between these walls, and having the relationships to grow, like our relationship. And like you say, there's 3 generations here. And I hope that never changes. And I don't think it will, because the stewards, like the John Lynskeys that are here still today, and we'll make sure that the path is there. But Tony mentions it. I mean, the attention to detail, you could see the love, and you could see it out there, on the streets. Like I said, it's not, Columbus isn't, on 87th Avenue and 32nd Street. Columbus is everywhere. It's in our hearts.
And it's evolving. It's constantly in motion.
And you know why it is? It's because of people like you who have given so much back. You love the place. And
Love the people.
And love the people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's been great. People ask me about my role now, and I will tell them it shows. You talked about legacy before. That you don't know it when you're doing it, because I was a kid when I was teaching you, particularly when I was teaching you. I was like, but then you realize, it did make a difference. And this is where it comes back around. And to have relationships with guys now in their 50s, in their 40s, whatever the case may be, you cannot put a dollar amount on that.
No.
The value, and the value that both of you have in my life, I can't say thank you enough. So,
Likewise,
but I will say thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you. Explore Nation, I hope you've enjoyed part 2 with the Gonzalez brothers. I love them both. I thank them for what they do. And so until next time, adelante and buenos tiempos. Thanks, boys.
Thank you,
Yes,
Coach.
sir.